Fighting games are all about competition, and to find the winner, we run tournaments. But not all tournaments are equal. I'm sure CoastGuard's weekly Guard the Coast wouldn't provide as much prestige as a tournament like this, the pinnacle of fighting games, Evolution in Vegas. Every year we hold an open bracket to give players the opportunity to be crowned as EVO Champion, the highest level of prestige for a fighting game player. But that's just for the open bracket tournaments. The other side of the coin is the Invitational Tournament. Not everyone can enter, you'll need to get an invitation to play. And the most distinguished, most prestigious event for Street Fighter is the Capcom Cup, the climax of the Capcom Pro Tour where the hard work through the year can finally be paid off. But due to recent events, the pop-up of a competing invitational, and Capcom playing into the much bigger Japanese fanbase who are willing to pay-per-view in order to increase profits in a way that alienates everyone including the Japanese fanbase, let's just say that Capcom Cup isn't in its best state. Hey, you guys? Actually, all of you guys get over here. This is a serious video, so keep your quibbling on topic, okay? Okay, good. So, I want to go back a bit and focus on an older Capcom Cup, the final Capcom Cup of Street Fighter V, one that was thrilling, shocking, and a bit controversial. Street Fighter V went on for a year longer than expected, so Capcom Cup IX should have been the first year for Street Fighter VI, but that's not what happened. And because of world events, the previous two Capcom Cups were basically cancelled, relegated to online exhibitions, so this was the first actual Capcom Cup in 3 years. But that wasn't what caused the controversy. Instead of the invites given out to those who qualified through a point system, the better you do at major tournaments grinding points, a system that might have rewarded consistency, this year we had the World Warrior system. There would be one open tournament for each region with the winner getting a spot, along with monthly tournaments with points where the top 8 would play to gain another spot. This meant that region strength wasn't accounted for, and every region was allowed 2 players into the cup, a truly worldwide competition. But this may be what caused players like Ivan to consider this tournament as lesser, claiming that he won the last quote-unquote real Capcom Cup.
You know, as far as I'm concerned, I won the last real Capcom Cup.
But we're not here to discuss all of that, and they did add the point system back a couple of years later. Coming into this tournament, the last tournament of Street Fighter V, there were a lot of players with something to prove, and many narratives that needed to be resolved. But before Capcom Cup proper even began, we need to talk about the Last Chance Qualifier. Other than your regional events and the slot given to the EVO Winner of the Year, the only way to make it in was through a monster of an open bracket. Everyone else needed to fight for this one slot. And coming into this tournament, there were a lot of notable names who didn't qualify yet, Tokido, Problem X, and Gachikun being very notable examples. But the favorite for this LCQ was Shuto. Shuto had been having a breakout year with his Urien, usually ending up as the anchor for his team in Street Fighter League Japan. Shuto was in contention for the best player in the world at the time. It was just unfortunate that his home region of Japan not only had another contender for the best player in the world, but also fierce competition relegating him to the LCQ. But as Shuto made his way through the bracket, an unexpected obstacle appeared in his path. A relatively unknown Chinese Bison player, Zen. Before the event, Coach Ding had made a tweet saying that Zen was world class, and to not be surprised if he won the LCQ. And despite Zen's lack of international appearances, he did not disappoint. First was a scrap with Problem X, where Zen managed to come out on top in a V-Shift exhibition. And we arrived at winner's final with Shuto vs Zen. Shuto took the first game, but it was all downhill from there. Zen took advantage of Bison's punishing frame traps, leading to big damage on top of big damage, and more importantly, leveraged Shuto's sparing usage of V-reversal to smother him with plus frames. Combine that with his willingness to mash on defense, and we are left with an upset that almost no one saw coming. The favorite to win it all was in loser's bracket. And things didn't start looking up for Shuto in his match against Kichipa. While Shuto was successful on offense, especially with his Aegis, he just couldn't catch a break on defense. Kichipa took his neutral wins to the bank and snuck in too many command grabs. And just like that, the favorite was gone, and Grand Finals of LCQ was Zen vs Kichipa, another result that nobody saw coming. In Game 1, Zen showed why he deserved to be there, swiftly taking the win with a perfect round just to rub it in. But we went back to character select and Kichipa counterpicked with Zangief. Zangief can use his V-Skill 1 to armor through Bison's big slow buttons, and this worked to great effect. He got his game. But then Zen started being more reactive in his neutral, focusing a bit more on whiff punishing, and that was all it took for him to get his openings on offense and win the set. Most Bison players complement their skips with their buttons. Zen was complementing his buttons with his skips. The final player in Capcom Cup IX. Zen the China Bison. And what we are left with now is this list of hopeful players, all with opportunity to claim the last Capcom Cup title of Street Fighter V. And we can start with the reigning Capcom Cup champion, IDOM, Ivan Domination.
Ivan Domination!
Ivan had won the previous Capcom Cup, beating Punk in the grand finals, and he was looking to go back-to-back, solidifying an already very impressive resume in this game. After all, nobody had won 2 Capcom Cups, let alone 2 in a row. But if anyone could do it, it would be Ivan, the player who was so close to winning EVO just a few months back. And speaking of EVO, the current EVO champion Kawano, chasing the accolade of winning EVO and Capcom Cup on the same year. An impossible challenge, but Kawano had been looking amazing all year, and the Good 8 squad had been living up to their reputation as the super team. And now it's time for Kawano to once again showcase just how good he was, even outside of the team setting. For how dominant Good 8 squad was, only half of them made it into Capcom Cup, but the 2 they sent definitely deserved their spot. Pugera, the Balrog player, had a strong case for best player in the world. Now it was time for him to prove it on the biggest stage. Sure, he lost in the premiere, but this was the perfect time not only for redemption, but to prove to the world that he was the #1 player. And the player that beat him, Momochi, the representative for the older generation of players, still swinging in the final season of Street Fighter V. Tokido and Daigo didn't make it in, so it's up to him. Momochi also wasn't as explosive in 5 as he was in 4, but now with final season Cody in his hands, he's looking to prove that he still has it, with the potential to become the first ever 2-time Capcom Cup champion. But out of everyone who qualified, there was no player with more to prove than Punk the God. If there was any player who defined the way Street Fighter V was played, it would be Punk. After exploding onto the scene in 2016, Punk stacked up tournament win after tournament win in dominant fashion, with his seemingly inhuman ability to single hit confirm and whiff punish. And all that while playing in the mud of PlayStation 4 lag. Generational talent changed the game, but despite his treasure trove of tournament wins, he kept falling short in the big one. Punk had yet to win EVO, and he had yet to win a Capcom Cup. Punk hadn't won either of the big ones, and this was his chance to go from being Iverson to Curry. The UK-Ireland World Warrior produced 2 players that just a few years ago would have been a complete shock to everyone. Problem X somehow didn't make it into the Cup, losing to 4 Phils in the regional qualifier, and then to ending Walker in the World Warrior. Phils had been an integral part to Mouse Esports' success in Street Fighter League Europe, and he was looking to make up for his disappointing performance in the playoffs. And the other player, the prodigy ending Walker. After dominating his region in online tournaments, ending Walker truly made a name for himself by winning UFA at the ripe age of 16. And by playing Ed, no less. And now it was time to see what he could do under the brightest of lights. How will he stack up against a truly international competition? Staying in that part of the world, we have Mr. Crimson, the Dalsum player who had been chasing his second big result since defeating Ivan in Red Bull Kumite London in 2021. Crimson had been considered a top-tier threat playing a top-tier character. Top 1 in my opinion, and now was the chance to get some hardware for it. And for the final players, we need to take a look at that year's Street Fighter League US. Chris CCH, future hater of Noah, had just come off an amazing season, leading his team to an impressive 2nd place, beating the super team Nasser X Bandits in playoffs. That combined with his dominance in the West Coast meant that he was expected to perform. And speaking of Nasser X Bandits, we had Angry Bird, Big Bird, and Mena RD, with an absolutely dominant regular season in Street Fighter League. Now, they did make it far in playoffs, but it was clear that they had adapted well to the game's changes and were looking to prove it in a solo setting, with Mena also chasing the 2-time. Finally, we had the actual winners of Street Fighter League US, UYU's NL and DCQ. NL had been putting up solid results, with a win in Combo Breaker 2018 and a 2nd place in Kumite for Kumite 2021 Vegas. But the even bigger threat was DCQ, the MVP of SFL US. Despite getting into the game late, Coach Ding was absolutely electric in the league and was now going to take his talents to one-on-one international competition. China hadn't seen that much representation in Street Fighter V, now was the chance to change that. And with the stage set, we get to an event that would decide the fate of all these hopeful players. The group draw. Capcom Cup IX would have a group stage. Players would be placed in groups of 6, 5 for the last group, and they would play round robin with each other. The 2 best records in each group would be placed in the finals bracket, with the worst of the 2 starting in losers bracket. Double elimination tournament, you lose once in winners, you go to losers. You lose in losers, you're out. This meant that what group you got placed in was a big deal. Depending on your opponents, your path to the finals may be a lot tougher or a lot easier. And so we rolled the bones and come out with this. First thing that comes to mind is that a couple of groups have clear favorites to win out. Ivan looks to take a dominant win in Group A, Kawano will take Group B, Punk looks like he can easily secure C, Ending Walker will take D, and NL with E. But once we get to Group F, things start getting a bit tricky. Group F turned out to be a bit of a deaf group. Angry Bird, Coach Ding, Crimson, and Chris CCH, and only 2 of them can make it out. Then Group G had Zen, the LCQ winner, along with Big Bird and Momochi. One of these 3 would not make it, and it wasn't clear who would be cut. Finally, in Group H, the only group with 5 players, Mena and Pugera. It seemed that Pugera would come out on top. And after 3 grueling days of group stage, we end up with these results. Oh no. These don't look right at all. What happened? A few groups went exactly as expected, so let's go over those first. Ending Walker and NL won their groups pretty handily, even though Ending Walker was 1 drop combo away from a loss. Kawano took Group B, and unfortunately, Phil's ended his journey. And in Group G, Zen proved his dominance and the LCQ was not a fluke. 1 out, and unfortunately for Big Bird, despite winning the head-to-head against Momochi, didn't qualify due to the net win score being the determining factor. Thank Mono for that. And when we finally make it to the Def group, we have Angry Bird sweeping the competition and making it out on winners, with Crimson coming out in losers. Coach Ding and Chris CCH went 2-3. Both lost to Crimson and Angry Bird, and unfortunately that was it for them. The Def group had claimed its victims. But those were expected deviations, the results of having too many strong players in a group. But the real upsets were in these groups. Let's go from slight deviations to biggest upsets. In Group H, Mena had actually beaten Pugera and taken the top seed from the group. Mena played outside of light dash punch range, and when he didn't, he aggressively took space without fear of the dash punch. Combine that with a very unfortunate misconfirm, along with Pugera's general refusal to just block on defense, and Mena came out with an unexpected win. But that wasn't even the biggest upset. We'll get there after we talk about Ivan. Ivan didn't sweep his group. He had dropped a set to Team Wild Blast's own Takamura. Ivan started with Poison, but Takamura was ready for it, with V-Skill Armor to stop EX Heart Raid, along with Red Fireballs to challenge the zoning, and Dive Kicks to take advantage of the Crouch Brainless anti-air. Takamura was very prepared for the matchup, so Ivan swapped to Laura and did take game 2, but Takamura played very passively in the neutral, forcing Ivan to press buttons, and did well in pushing his offense with Akuma's trickery options, and was able to come out 5-0 in the group. Didn't help that Ivan didn't block a single reversal. The reigning Capcom Cup champion would have to win through losers bracket. And now we come to the biggest upset of the group stage. The 2 players who made it out of Group C were Valmaster on losers, the second best French player after Crimson, and Chinese representative VX Bao? Wait, what happened to Punk? In Coach Ding's tweet that we mentioned earlier, he had also stated that VX Bao was better than him, after he'd put up his MVP performance in Street Fighter League. And here we got to see the proof. Punk chose to play the Cody Ditto, and that wasn't the best idea. Unfortunate drops, along with Bao's superior usage of EX Bingo, left Punk down 0-2. Coach Ding was right, Bao was the real deal. Punk then lost to Brandon, leaving him in a terrible situation for his final set. He had to beat Valmaster without dropping a game, or he wouldn't qualify. Punk played quite passive, didn't throw out many buttons, and was a bit too zealous in challenging Valmaster's buttons, and just like that, Punk was out. His big one would have to wait. It wouldn't come in Street Fighter V. Maybe 2 years from now. With groups finished, it leaves us with this finals bracket. And outside of perhaps a lack of Japanese dominance, there really isn't anything wrong with this bracket. Just about everyone here belongs, and certain favorites had lost in their group, meaning they would have to start in losers bracket. You lose, you out. Ivan lost to Takamura.
You need to be punished.
Losers bracket. Pugera lost to Mena.
You need to be punished.
Losers bracket. To start in losers, Crimson 3-0 zipped his countryman, Valmaster, in what could be considered an unfortunate seeding event. And Pugera found himself facing Ivan in an even more unfortunate seeding event. There would be no doubt that he would have to face Ivan eventually, he was the reigning champion, but in round 1, that was just unlucky. Pugera was a Balrog player, the best Balrog in the world. but Ivan was by far the best Laura in the world, and the Laura-Balrog matchup is especially one-sided. Balrog loses very hard, and it showed in the set. Hugera couldn't find an answer for Laura's fireball, and Ivan's world-class offense came in full effect. Hugera may have been the Street Fighter League World Champion, but that was the only title he was leaving with this year. In winners, Mena had beaten Takamura, NL had fallen to Ending Walker, and the EVO champion Kawano had lost to Zen. Zen did a magnificent job suffocating Kawano in the neutral, keeping him hesitant from really pressing buttons. But Kawano still managed to get plenty of openings by buffering with his stand light kick. But with Zen having a good read on Kawano's wicked parries, and Kawano not having a good read on Zen's command grabs, the victory came swiftly and clean. Then we had Angry Bird vs. Bao, a match that was very one-sided. Bao was not able to dissuade Angry Bird from aggressively taking space, and in turn pushing his offense, which didn't leave him with too many opportunities to take advantage of his EX bingo. When he did get those opportunities, he ran away with it, but it wasn't enough to keep Amjad at bay, and he took the set 3-1. Bao was now in losers, which meant our winner semis was Mena vs. Ending Walker, and Zen vs. Angry Bird. We began with the Prodigy versus the Bull. This was an exciting match, as this would be the first time the two clashed. Due to the state of the world, players were confined to their own regions, and due to the netcode of the game, they could only really play with people nearby. How would the Bull deal with Ending Walker's stubborn Ed? Game 1 went in Ending Walker's favor. A combination of good charged heavy punch and catching Mena low a couple of times let him secure the game. But after Game 1, it seemed like Mena got a grasp on the situation. Throughout the entire set, Mena played around Flicker very well, never letting Ending Walker exploit it. Not only that, Mena was spacing very well, constantly outside of Ed's effective range while pressing big birdie buttons. And Ending Walker just didn't have an answer for the can. Mena had played Luke in previous crucial matches in this tournament, but the birdie pick here seemed like absolute genius. Ending Walker wasn't comfortable with the matchup, and it sent him to losers. Mena was in winners finals. And now, the other matchup in winners, Angry Bird vs. Zen. Two players who have been playing close to perfect for the whole tournament so far. How would they face off against one another? Not well for Angry Bird. Zen dominated the ground game, stealing fireballs and swinging with his big buttons. Angry Bird responded by taking to the air, and had success with his EX Tatsu, but it didn't guarantee success. Zen was anti-airing very well on a character with an anti-air weakness. But where the game was really decided was on offense. Zen's shimmies were just too successful, his command grabs always landed, and despite Angry Bird taking rounds, it ended up being a swift 3-0 for Zen. Angry Bird was now in losers, and Zen was quickly becoming the favorite to win the tournament. It was crazy to think about, that an unknown player who qualified at the last minute may be the one to take it all. But before we get to winners finals, let's take a quick trip to the losers bracket, the second chance bracket to see who out of these players would make top 8. Crimson beat Takamura, and now we have Momochi vs. NL. The set started off heavily in Momochi's favor, a very solid and dominant performance in Game 1. Then, after some unfortunate missed confirms in Game 2, Momochi managed to go up 2-0. But after a tight timeout by NL and an incredible perfect, the game was on, and it really was a back and forth game. One person would run away with the offense at a time, NL would get a perfect, and Momochi would respond with a thesis on why Cody was absolutely busted. But NL managed to come out on top, completing the reverse 3-0 to eliminate Momochi. The last of the old guard had fallen. It was actually possible that there would be no Japanese players in top 8. The region that was the best at this game could possibly not have a representative in the final bracket. But that was still a tall order. After all, Kawano was still in, and all he had standing in his path was Vega Patch, another member of Team Wild Blast. In leagues dominated by super teams, the underdog Team Wild Blast managed to get 3 of their members into Capcom Cup, which says something about something, but I'm not here to give an opinion on that. Jimmy Ryu didn't do too well, it was a hard group. Wild Blast didn't do very well in their league, but Jimmy Ryu said something that instantly made them my favorite team by far.
Everybody knows we're Team Wild Blast, so we're gonna play Wild now. So that's the change, you know?
Look, Vega Patch agreed. And now that he was in this position, facing off against one of the best players in the world, it was time to not only prove himself and make top 8 in the biggest invitational in the world, but it was also time to blast Wild. Kawano locked in Luke, and it seemed to make sense, as Colleen did not look good into Fang. No good way to deal with the fireballs, and no invincible reversal. And right off the bat, Kawano looked uncomfortable. Vigapito was sneaking in coward crouch after coward crouch, and Kawano kept unsuccessfully DPing through the fireballs. Kawano also didn't have an answer to his EX fireball. Wait, this looks familiar. Vega Patch played well, but Kawano played uncharacteristically poor. All that can be said is, Vigapito blasted Wild, blasted all the way into top 8, and pulled off the biggest upset of the tournament. A Wild Blast, Fantastic Asian Notorious Gang player was able to eliminate the EVO champion. Kawano would have to take his hopes, and the hopes of Japan, home with him. Technically this happened before the Momochi set, but I'm painting a narrative here, don't worry, everything will still be accurate. And for the final set in top 16, it was Bao versus Ivan. And unfortunately, Bao's path ended here. Despite his success with Cody, Bao started with Luke. Ivan had been very outspoken against Luke,
You know, if that was a projectile and not a hit scan.
but didn't find much success, immediately going down 0-2. So Bao switched to Urien. After all, as James Chen says,
But look, man, China is the land of Urien.
and was doing very well. With a very active defense, lots of mashing, lots of V-reversal and shift, and only a single Aegis. Suddenly, it was tied up 2-2, final round. But after a dropped punish, Ivan just ran him over, and there were no more Cody players. Bao had certainly made a name for himself, but this was as far as he would go. And yes, he wore a Yoshikage Kira tie for the entire event. With the top 8 established, we only have a few more matches to go, and we have 2 quick ones to go through. Unfortunately for everyone at home, this was Vega Patch's last game. He couldn't blast Wild enough and couldn't keep Ivan out. Fast 3-0. And Crimson quickly took care of NL. Really abused Instant Air Gale as a shimmy tool and won very convincingly. No more Vega Patch, no more NL. Ivan and Crimson were just players that, if you didn't have experience playing against them specifically, you were going to have a hard time. A combination of their character choice and their playstyles. And to continue that, Ivan ending Walker was nuts. After losing 1 game of Poison, Ivan switched to Laura and began to put up an incredible performance. Ending Walker did play well, taking advantage of his flicker and his heavy kick in neutral, but Ivan was showing why his Laura was 1 of 1. He was taking full advantage of his fireball, and he was whiff punishing with his crouch heavy punch and confirming his crouch medium kick. All that means is that while he does have the disgusting Laura V-Trigger 1, he was still making his way in and forcing some of the best offense in the world. The score makes the game look worse than it was, but Ivan took 3 in a row after the switch, and Ending Walker was out. For his first Capcom Cup, and as the youngest to qualify to a Capcom Cup yet, this was not an unsatisfying conclusion. But this wouldn't be the end of his journey, it was just beginning. Last match in Losers Quarters, Angry Bird Crimson, a run back from Group F. Angry Bird had won that set, he had played Rashid and implemented an unconventional strategy, but now it was first to 3, not just first to 2. Angry Bird relied on using Rashid's movement tools to get in on Sim, then exploited his lack of a good consistent anti-air and just mixed him to death. Not very conducive to Street Fighter V's usual neutral cycle. And he tried to do the exact same thing in this set, and it looked like it was working. Angry Bird went up 2-1. But this time it was different. Crimson pushed his advantage more, kept out Angry Bird, and took the set in a tight 3-2 set. Angry Bird had a phenomenal season, but it would have to end here. His day in the sun would come another year, in another game. Losers semi-finals. Ivan Crimson, a rematch of Kumite London. Crimson took that set, but things could be different this time. And they were. Crimson couldn't contain Ivan, and he ran him over with his offense. He saw his openings, seized them, and took them all the way to a 3-1 victory. For as well as Crimson played, and for as far as he took Dalzim, he couldn't overcome Ivan domination. Now, there were only 3 players left in the cup. Ivan and Mena, both only games away from becoming the first 2-time Capcom Cup champion, and Zen, who has shocked everyone since winning the LCQ and going the distance. Whoever wins this tournament will get a massive addition to their legacy. And to start, we have winners finals. Mena versus Zen. The new blood versus the proven Street Fighter V champion. Mena goes back to Luke and starts to set off with a perfect. And he just took it from there. Bison V Skill 1 is his tool to deal with fireballs, but because Luke has his hit scan fireball, the V skill was not very effective in dealing with it, and Mena took full advantage of this, keeping Zen out and preventing him from pushing his neutral game, and once he did get in, he was very active on defense. V-shifts, wake-up supers, jumps, and invincible reversals. Mena had a grasp on Zen's offense, and he took advantage. He had also taken advantage of Bison's weaknesses. He punished a backdash with a reversal, and he took advantage of his weak anti-airs to close out 2 games. 3-1 Mena, and Zen loses his first set in 2 tournaments. The Bull was here, and he was playing in great form. Losers Finals. Idom, the last hope of the United States, versus Zen right off his first loss. If Ivan wants to keep his back-to-back hopes alive, he'd have to take down a player that only Mena has had an answer for so far. But I did say earlier, Ivan was a player that you need experience against, or you'll just lose. And this was Zen's first international tournament. How would he match up? Despite both of these characters being known for skips, both Ivan and Zen were playing very heavy neutral. And while Zen's character may have abysmal walk speed, his buttons were still better than Laura's, and he was taking full advantage of that. But no matter what, Ivan will eventually find his way in. It's just how good he is. But it seemed that Zen was prepared. He blocked overheads, and he was willing to use V-shift to get out of bad situations. Ivan wasn't able to consistently vortex him to death. And on the side of offense, Zen had his foot down on the offensive pressure. Ivan wasn't spending V-gauge on defense. He needed it for his trigger. Combined with Zen's awareness for the armored EX elbow, and Ivan looked mortal. 3-1 victory, there would be no back-to-back victory for the king of NLBC. Grand Finals, a repeat of Winners Finals, Zen vs Mena, China vs the DR. A matchup that most people wouldn't have dreamed of. Mena is only 3 games away from cementing himself as one of the greatest to ever do it, the first to ever win 2 Capcom Cups. And it was time for Zen to finish his Cinderella story. For a relatively unknown player to qualify from the LCQ and go all the way to take the championship. It looked like Mena had Zen figured out in their previous set, and now Zen had to win 2 sets in a row to take home the Capcom Cup. Zen Mena, here we go. Game 1, Round 1. Mena applies the same fireball strategy to great effect, makes his way in, and takes the round swiftly. A dominant performance. Round 2. Zen walks him down to the corner, Mena gets out, but a read on reversal gives Zen the round. Round 3. Zen makes his way in, but Mena wakes up with a super, but an EX Stomp helps Zen steal the round. 1-0 Zen. It's starting to look up for the Chinese Bison player. Zen sneaks the next round with some crucial skips and a back throw to close it out. Zen went off for the next round, but Mena's heavy use of V-shift and V-reversal, as well as another reversal super, clinched out the round. Round 3 was looking even until Mena hit a big crush counter interrupting Zen's offense. Then a read on his command grab tied things up 1-1. Game 3, Zen starts off by walking Mena to the corner, then takes advantage of an early activation to smother him with Bison's plus frames. A devastating crush counter earns him the round. Round 2, Zen finds a lot of value off his EX Stomp, but he was just short of a game-winning combo. Then another reversal super snags the round for Mena. Round 3, a whiff scissors, a drop confirm, a check stomp, and a check dash, and Mena was now up 2-1. Just one more game for Mena to become the first and only 2-time. Game 4, a crush counter and a stun built Mena a huge lead, and another read on Zen's command grab got him the round. We are now on match point for Mena RD. He wins this, he wins it all. But Zen wasn't going down yet, starting with a big block reversal and scrounging together just enough hits at the end to force a round 3. And Mena finds himself in the exact same situation. Just one more round and it could all be his. Round starts off good for Zen, gets Mena in the corner but misses the stun twice in a row. Mena DPs to get him off, then with 2 risky jumps, gets out of danger. Stops a stomp, sneaks in 2 throws, and is now playing the range game. Mena doesn't need to approach, he has his V-trigger. Zen raw activates hoping to get something going, and misspaces his Psycho Crusher. Mena swiftly punishes, and takes the set. It's over. Mena RD had become the first and only 2-time Capcom Cup champion. Zen could not go all the way, not when the Bull was standing in his path.
2-timer, Mena RD!
Mena wasn't projected to be the best player at Capcom Cup IX, but he sure played like the best. He was the only one who was able to shut down Zen's unorthodox Bison playstyle. Zen may have prepared for almost everyone, but Mena was prepared for Zen. And so we end the story of Street Fighter V, if we ignore Evo Japan, with Mena hoisting the Capcom Cup and earning his second custom costume for the game. eventually, right? But the stories don't end here. They continue with Street Fighter 6, and they are still ongoing as we speak. And with $1 million cash prize for winning the cup, the competition has never been so fierce.